Takapuna 807, Devonport 811812, thermal smoke system, access number 8003, Takapuna Towers, 1919 Como Street.
So it was 10 to 9 on a Thursday night shift. Turned out to a private fire alarm activation and we responded as usual.
We were just finishing up some operational OSMs, Operation Skills Maintenance. When we received the alarm, we were responded to a second pump.
So on that evening we'd started our checks at normal time, 1800, and then went into some training which pretty much lasted until we got the call to Como Street.
Initially on this incident it was just, it's just another PFA. We'll get there, do a check of the building and probably end up coming back home.
Although we go to a lot of false alarms, you always go, on the way you always treat them as being an actual incident, so we have a process that we follow.
En route I was handed the site report, which is pretty standard in our appliance. We thought we were just basically going to a standard PFA. We're also listening to the monitoring the radio as it's fairly close to the border and we occasionally beat Takapuna there.
En route to the call we were actually getting out the site report.
Normally I just read it on the way to myself, but I don't know why, but I read it out loud. We had a conversation on the way there.
Basically confirmed to us where the panel was, how many stories were located at the building, the location of the building on the street. We turn into the street, we locate where the panel is, so we park the vehicle so that in the event of it escalating there is room for aerial appliances to be parked.
The approach we took, I actually looked up the face of the building and there was no sign of fire. We turned into Como Street. I put the K77 arrival in, which means there's no sign of fire. Went through the process, BA set on, tally to number 1, the entry control board came out, the tallies went in the board. We were going through the process, my crew getting the thermal imaging camera, breaking in tool. So I then went to the panel and the panel showed fire, zone floors 5, 6 and 7 and defect, so I still thought it was a false alarm.
As we're at the panel checking what's happening with the panel, member of the public were saying there's something going on, and then there was an explosion where flame came out of the building.
Fire, one involved.
So Quinn then moved us to actually site where in the building it was coming from.
We proceeded down Huron Street, which is parallel to Como Street because of the one-way entrance. The boys in the back sort of thought they could see some smoke drifting across the road. At that stage, a 77 had been put in by Quinn, the incident commander. As we turned the corner, we could see that there was a well-involved fire on the 5th floor.
I moved to the left-hand side of the building and looked up, and there was quite a lot of flame coming out of the 5th floor window. And it was actually covering the 6th and half of 7th floor as well. So that's when I put in a priority message and transmitted a greater alarm.
It's a real high-rise, so you tend to get your game face on.
Confirmed fire, floor 5, 19 Como Street, 3rd alarm, over.
Priority message, transmit, 3rd alarm received. What it means for me is that in somewhere like a central sort of a city area, is you get a lot of resources responding and they arrive very quickly, so you're having to think about how you're going to structure the incident ground to cope with this influx of resources. Because this building was unsprinkled, it had more appliances than a sprinkled building, and it included an aerial appliance that was responded from city. So that was on the initial turnout. So by going to a third alarm, a second alarm means that more appliances are responded, and a third alarm means more appliances and more specialist appliances. So command unit was turned out, another aerial appliance would have been turned out. We would have had numerous fire appliances from around the city responding to this incident, and with that goes a whole lot of notifications to a whole lot of executive officers, and suddenly people get interested. It was about around that time that the second appliance arrived, and the station officer, Greg Booker, came up to me. He'd seen the fire as well on the approach.
After a short discussion with Quinn, it was decided that he would assign me the forward control point, so Sector Commander forward control, and I'd take his crew who were already out with their high-rise packs to set up a full control point on the 4th floor and tackle the fire from there.
Because the way I saw it, if we hit this early, that we would be able to knock it in the early stages. So he knew that establishing the forward control point and then deploying a BA team with a delivery from the riser outlet was the tactics that we had.
I got Quinn's crew. We had a look at the fire from the outside, just get an awareness of what was happening, and then proceeded into the stairwell up to the 4th floor to set up the forward command point for fire attack.
Once we were assigned to Greg's team and he told us which floor we were going to, my role is being number one on the pump. I've got one of the bandoliers. I've got to make sure that by the time we get to the 4th floor, I've got to be able to get the hose prepared so that we can make access up to the fire floor. And the number 2, he's carrying the other length on the bandolier. Between the two of us, we get the actual hose that's going to be used for firefighting ready to go.
As we proceeded up the stairs, there was smoke logging in the stairwell. It wasn't at a stage, it wasn't untenable. It was comfortable enough to be walking up the stairs, but there was smoke.
Smoke as a factor affecting your sight wasn't an issue, but that was soon to change.
I was the initial incident controller and dealing with operations as well. And so I appointed a sector commander, firefighting, a lobby control officer, and a sector commander, search and rescue. Had a staging officer, and then we had a command point officer as well. And basically the key was to corral personnel at that staging area, gather equipment there ready for the lobby control officer, because the sector commanders go to the lobby control officer and ask for equipment that's provided by the staging area. I remember saying to the staging area officer that to organise the firefighters that were there, because you get a big pool of firefighters and officers, actually corral them into BA teams, so that because this was a BA, this was a lot of reliance on BA teams, especially in the search and rescue component. So there were teams ready to roll out.
As we turned into the top of Walburn Street, the fire had actually broken out of the 5th floor and was fully involved in that area. At that stage, I called the incident controller and asked him where he'd like us.
Because so many appliances were arriving at around about the same time, I was looking to appoint a safety officer, and we just had this new safety officer pack. And I saw Senior Station Officer Steve Gallagher arrive on the incident ground and thought, right. So I appointed him as safety officer. He grabbed the safety officer pack. We had a short conversation, and then he made his way around the incident ground, talked to sector commanders and the lobby control officer, and then came back to me and highlighted what some of those hazards were. It wasn't quite half an hour into the incident, the area commander, Dennis O'Donoghue, arrived on the incident ground. He notified me that he was on the fire ground, and normally what happens, and I think that's what happened in this instance, is that the area commander would have a quick look around what's going on, and then he reported to me and asked for a handover.
My observation was, well-established fire on the 5th floor, looking like it was going to spread to the 6th and 7th in an unsprinkled building, and if we weren't able to stop it quickly, it could have travelled right through, right up the building.
At this point, when that hazard board was completed, I'd have been appointed as operations commander, so the incident controller is required to sign that. So that meant that area commander Dennis O'Donoghue had to sign this hazard board. This is quite a serious thing to take on. You want to make sure that what you're doing is right. What was interesting is that we had it set up at the command unit, and we decided to move it to the lobby control point, because that way each firefighter that was went through lobby control to go to the various sectors
had to read the hazard board and could identify what the hazards were.
So once I've established that the right people are in the right positions and things are happening right, it's really reviewing and making sure that I'm getting good sit reps coming in, and Quinn and myself are on the same level, and he's talking to his sectors and he's talking to me to see if the aim and the strategy is actually working.
Sector Commander, Search and Rescue, Bradley, this is Operations Commander Webster, over.
With regards to the other appliances arriving, there were quite a few starting to arrive, and so one of those was the aerial appliance.
As we drove in, there was a car park on the western side of the building. That particular car park was right in front of the fire. It was a vacant car park. Obviously the time of day, if it had been during the day, may not have got in there, may not have been able to get close enough. So yeah, it was perfect.
The sighting of the aerial was a gift. You couldn't choose a better position. An empty car park, directly adjacent to a corner of the building, and it was visible when he arrived. It was just such an obvious position.
And at that point, so we've got a crew going inside, we've got an aerial appliance that's starting to establish in a good location, but at the same time I'm looking at the fire alarm panel, and the lights on the panel are starting to go up and down the building. We went from 5, 6, 7 to now 8, 9, 10 and starting to go down the building as well.
Once we got to the 4th floor, we started setting up the low pressure delivery. There was the 2 firefighters and myself. My crew were on the way up behind us. They arrived a few minutes after us, and they started assisting us with the setup. At that stage, the smoke was starting to become a bit thicker, so I got the fire attack crew to start up as I finished setting up the hose. I attempted to place the hose outside the door just to make it a bit easier for them, but I could only get about a third or halfway up the stairwell up to the 5th floor. By the time I'd turn on the riser valve, and got down there, the smoke basically chased us down and we had to exit the building.
Having seen the flames coming out of 5, covering 6 and impinging on 7 as well, I made the call that potentially the fire had spread to floors 6 and 7, and so I transmitted a 4th alarm.
Assistance call, 4th alarm transmitted, building fire, Takapuna Towers, 1919 Como Street.
The boys had started up, and as we were exiting, there was a couple of messages I wanted to get to the fire attack team. There was the one that, in fact, the fact that I'd assigned another member to their team. I was sure they knew about it, but I just wanted to confirm that. So I communicated with the fire attack team that, 1, there'd another man assigned to them, and 2, that we were exiting the stairwell because it was too smoke-logged.
For years, we've been really practicing the process of incident ground communications and the way we discipline our radio messages. And every call we go to that I'm involved in, I expect my officers and my firefighters to use radio discipline. And so what happens is over a period of time that becomes the norm, and that paid off big time at this incident because it wasn't a casual conversation over the IGC radios in the initial stages. It was surnames. Later on it became role, so people were referred to by role, not by name. And when you set that tone on incident ground communications at an incident, people who are arriving hear that same process, that same discipline, and they adopt it because that's what's happening.
Sector Commander, Search and Rescue, Bradley, this is Operations Commander Webster, over.
It became very clear to me in the early stages that the aerial officer was keen to deploy that external aerial attack.
As we'd parked and I set the crew to work, I spoke to the incident controller and told him that we'd found a very good spot on the western side of the building and we'd be able to make an effective and quick extinguishment of that fire.
I actually called up Station Officer Booker and explained to him that I could see the lights on the panel going up and down the building. He explained to me that he was well aware of what was happening with the smoke spread and that he was actually having established a forward control point on the 4th floor, was having to actually come down the building. It soon became clear that an external fire attack was a better option. The fire would go out quicker, it would be easier on our firefighters and safer. So it was a
a gimme. But first we had to get water to the aerial appliance. So the appliances that were arriving in that stage, I was using firefighters from those appliances to assist establishing water to the aerial, because that was the priority. In the meantime, the internal crew that were under the command of Station Officer Booker were establishing a low pressure delivery, starting up and forming a BA team, and putting everything in place for that initial tactic, which was the internal fire attack. So there was a lot happening.
We got to the fire floor door. We were made aware that the decision had been made to actually make the initial fire attack from the aerial appliance. So we actually held back at the door until the all clear had been given for us to make entry into the fire floor and then advance into the compartment that was on fire.
Once that decision was made that we were going to go to an external fire attack, I made it crystal clear to my sector commander, Greg Booker, that we were going to change tactics. He made it crystal clear to his BA team that the tactics were to change. They acknowledged that they were aware that was going to happen, so they took steps to make sure they were safe. So everyone was being absolutely certain that everyone knew exactly what was going on.
Be aware, the stairwell is smoke logged and no visibility, over. Message received.
Station Officer Booker informed us that forward control point had been relocated, and that was due to the fact that the hose had kept the fire door open, so smoke was just billowing out.
We knew we needed to clear the smoke out of the stairwell. I assigned that role to one of the officers with his crew to set up a positive pressure ventilation fan at the bottom of the stairwell and attempt to clear the smoke out of it.
Be advised, we are going to commence operation with a PPV, an attempt to clear the stairwell of smoke, over.
For our firefighters, it wasn't really a problem because they were in breathing apparatus, and the sector commander search and rescue, all the firefighters that were entering the building were started up in BA. But if there were potentially anybody inside the building that was trying to exit, we were filling the stairwell up with fumes. So the safety officer picked up on that very quickly and recommended that practice stop.
So once I'd established from the incident controller that we'd been given the go-ahead to do an external aerial attack, I double-checked to make sure that the crews hadn't entered the room or area of fire. Once I'd got the confirmation that they were still outside in the stairwell, we commenced the aerial attack. Some of my considerations were we're putting water onto glass. That glass is going to go somewhere.
So it's very easy in that situation to open up with a very big monitor through a window and push the fire out into the building. There's a great danger of having an interior attack, an internal attack at least, coming in through a doorway, and an aerial attack coming in through the window. A great firepower and its ability to push a fire into people. So there's got to be a great deal of coordination.
An aerial monitor packs a lot of punch, and you don't want a firefighter having an external monitor hitting them. Once we established water to that aerial appliance and they were set up, we changed tactics.
So once we had extinguished the fire, which was approximately 3 to 4 minutes of water, we turned our monitor off. I advised the incident controller that I couldn't see any more fire or just hotspots showing, and that an internal attack would now be more suitable.
I got a message from the aerial officer, Station Officer Shane Story, that the bulk of the fire had been knocked on the 5th floor, and confirmed that it had not spread to 6 and 7. Well, then the decision was made to change the tactics again and go to an interior fire attack to knock the remaining pockets of fire that were in the building.
You have to think about risk assessment, your safety of your crew member, water availability. Also, you're really aware of your air management. You have to be vitally aware of air management, so you've got to be able to achieve the task that you've been directed to do. So for us, it was steady as she goes, but in a positive, sequential manner. Once we made access into the room, the smoke, a lot of the smoke has cleared. It's at a level now where we can actually have quite good vision. From outside looking in, it would have looked like no fire, but from the inside looking out, there were still quite a few hot spots on the inside that unfortunately the aerial's never going to be able to put out. So that's what our role was, and our task was to put out those hot spots.
So as the BA team were made entry, I could see them quite clearly. I advised them that the floor-to-ceiling windows had been blown out and to not come any closer than 1 metre of those windows.
Well, what worked really well here is that when I appointed a sector commander firefighting, I just trusted in that sector commander to deal with the firefighting. When I appointed the sector commander search and rescue, I left that up to that sector commander to deal with that. So I'm taking stuff away from myself and trusting in those station officers to do a good job and to deal with firefighters and to act safely. And if anything's going on, they provide me with sit reps, and that's what was happening. They were giving me sector sit reps on a fairly regular basis.
Our next tactic, now the fire is extinguished, is to confirm if there are personnel, people within the building, either above or below the fire floor. We need to clear this building. Over.
Building search complete and advise from 1 to 13 has been searched. Clear of all occupants, over.
Copy, thank you.
Yeah, there's a few key elements involved with this incident, from having the site report read to us, being familiar with the building, having an awareness of what the building was, to the sighting of the aerial appliance and how quickly that was able to deploy and make a positive impact on the fire, which made life easy for us from an internal firefighting perspective, and it made it a lot safer.
I believe the fire went well due to a number of factors. There was the pre-planning. We had access to site reports, both ourselves and the first arriving appliance. There was a timely arrival of ourselves before Quinn made entry, which allowed Quinn to remain in the incident controller position outside the building while I went in. Quinn put in a good command structure, appointed the right people in positions that required filling, and which just led to the job going very smoothly.
The reason for me that I see that this incident did go well is that people knew what the procedures were, knew what the intent of what we were trying to achieve was. And so for me it was relatively simple because I could pass on key components of this fire attack to individuals and rely on them to do what they needed to do. And so again they're relying on firefighters following procedures, so entry control procedures, good search and rescue and BA, good firefighting tactics. So procedures, right from the outset, we didn't know we were going to a fire, but we were going through the process. We were following the procedures so that when we did discover a fire, the things were already in place. The engine control board was out, our tallies were in the board. The guys were already starting to put their high-rise hose on over their shoulders ready to enter the building to investigate. So once, even though it was nothing showing on arrival, as soon as we recognised that it was a confirmed fire, it wasn't a scramble because everything was already in place. And so that's I guess, the benefit of following due process at every incident you go to, because you never know what's going to happen.
So what really stood out for me was the communications that we'd established earlier on, and once we'd established that, it seemed to flow through the whole incident. Also the teamwork of the crews was very efficient.
What's interesting about the site report and the fact that I read it out loud is that now we do that every time. The crew are far more interested in what's on the site report now, and they're asking me where the hydrants are on the way to the call. So that's something we do every time now.
From our perspective as firefighters, it went pretty smoothly. The best thing about it was the communication, and it just made life really easy for us because we were aware of what was going on around us. We knew we had support if we needed support. We knew there was support from the aerial if that was required, but we also knew that there were other firefighters there to support us as well. So we were able to achieve our task without having to second guess anything.
Well, I think there's certainly a heightened awareness. We're getting away from a macho image that there will be inherently a number of injuries in fires. When a fireman comes to work, he's entitled to go home in the same condition he came to work. We're not soldiers of war. We're dealing with something, and we should have the ability to do all of that safely. So that's now embedded in just about everything we're doing. We talked about incident ground sit reps. We're continually talking about what hazards are recognised as being there. So everybody has a responsibility to make sure that those hazards are broadcast. But on top of that, we have individual responsibility to make sure they're being safe, and officers certainly have a high requirement to make sure that their people are safe.
On that particular incident, we came back, we actually felt pretty satisfied. We thought that we'd overall, as part of the overall firefighting, that we'd achieved a good outcome. And it actually was an opportunity for us to put our training into action.